So a recent Facebook poster asked how we could put a virtual choir onto falling snowflakes, and so I've made this tutorial. Obviously I'm kind of talking to her, but because I love you all so much, I'll let you eavesdrop on the conversation. Now obviously this is kind of getting a bit late in the year for snowflakes, but I suppose the same theory applies to any sort of background image you want. You can have them on aeroplanes or cars or buildings or whatever. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you've watched Paul Saccone's video on making a virtual choir, and you've gone through syncing up your clips, etc. I don't know anything about virtual choirs or audio, so I haven't done that here. What I've done is I've mocked up 6 singers in inverted commas. Apart from the first one, I don't think any of them are singing, but we can use this for the example. I've got 10 seconds of footage for each clip, and I'm going to use 6 clips. If you want more than 6, then you probably need to extend the footage maybe to 20 seconds or so. Either way, the theory is the same. So we're on the edit page, we've layered our singers, and what we're going to do now is we're going to drag and select all tracks, right click and make a new fusion clip. This gives us our single track that contains all the footage from the 6 individual tracks. So we're going to take that into Fusion. So make sure your playhead's over the track and click Fusion. What we end up with is our 6 clips and a media out. The media out will be your final image that goes back to the timeline. All our clips at the minute are joined with merge nodes, which we don't need, so we can select all the merge nodes and just delete them, and we can disconnect this pipe for now. So the media runs, media 1 is your bottom track, and then they go up progressively up to the 6th track. What order you do this in doesn't really matter, but we will take each clip and treat it individually. So the first clip we will use is this chappy here. So the first thing we need to do is mask it so that you've just got your singer's face. To do that, we're going to come to this hotbar in the middle, grab an ellipse and take the output of the ellipse into the blue mask input of your media, which gives you your circle. We're going to position the circle roughly over the middle of his head, and then we're going to shrink the circle. Now to shrink the circle, you can either use your inspector tab over here, or, which is easier, if you come to the edge of the circle you'll see that it starts to flash white. Once it's white, you can click and drag and shrink your circle to the size you want it and adjust the position. With an ellipse node, using the drag method to resize, you need to be at 45-degree angles to maintain a perfect circle. If you catch it on the 90 degrees, vertical or horizontal, it becomes an ellipse rather than a circle, which we don't want. So we've got our chap masked. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in our snowflake. Now you can do it one of 2 ways. You can either find your snowflake and simply drag it into your media pool, and then you can drag it down from there, or, and the way I prefer to do it, is to use a loader node. So click anywhere outside to make sure nothing's selected, press Shift and Space bar, or I think Control and Spacebar if you're on Windows, and type loader into the search bar. This puts a loader node onto your flow and it opens this dialog box, and you need to look for the image that you're going to use. In this case it's the snowflake, so simply click your snowflake and open. Give it a second. Now this turns to the name of the file, which is Snowflakes, and if you look at it, you've got your snowflake and it's a transparent background. Next we need to come back to the menu bar, and at the very left hand edge you need to grab a background. You're going to take the output of your snowflake and drop it onto the output of the background. This now puts your snowflake onto a frame that's the same size as your footage. If you select the background and come to the inspector, you can drop the alpha down to 0 and it makes it transparent. So coming back to our masked footage, which is here, we're going to select media in 1, shift and spacebar again, and type transform. Now this transform node, we're going to take the output and drop it onto the merge node of your snowflake. And if we put that into the viewer, you can see we now have our snowflake and our image. The image is way too big and out of position, which is where the transform node comes in. If you click on your transform node, you can then come to your inspector, resize, and either using your inspector's numbers or grabbing hold of the handle in the middle, you can resize your picture to where you need it. So roughly in the middle of your snowflake is what we were going for. So now if we view our merge, we've got our snowflake with our picture in the middle. Next thing we want to be able to do is resize and animate this, and we're also going to make it spin as it's coming down the screen. So to do that, we're going to use two different nodes. The first node we're going to use is a DVE node. So select merge to, shift spacebar and DVE. And then after the DVE node, shift spacebar again and transform again. So these two nodes will let us animate our snowflake and to resize it if we need to. So the first thing I'm going to concentrate on is the DVE node. What the DVE node does, if we now put that into this viewer, is if you look in the inspector, you've got rotation around X, Y and Z. So if you take your Y and you can rotate your snowflake. So for each snowflake we're going to have 3 seconds for it to appear and then disappear. So it'll appear from the top, float down and disappear off the bottom, and that's going to take 3 seconds, which on my timeline I believe I've got 25 frames a second timeline, so 3 seconds will be 75 frames. So if you come to frame 75 with your playhead, check the keyframe for your Y rotation and then go back to 0 and set the Y value to -360. That will allow one complete rotation during the 3 second period, like so. The next thing we're going to do is come to our transform node, again using the same keyframes, so 75 frames and 0, we're going to bring our snowflake from the top down the screen and off the bottom. So if you just press the command key, you can use your middle wheel to just scroll the window out a bit so you can see what you're doing. So again, at frame 75, come to the center and keyframe the center and take it off, because this is the end of the animation, take it off the bottom. Sorry, let me put the transform in the window so you can see it. Take your snowflake off the bottom somewhere, like so. Go back to frame 0, which is the start of your animation, and we just need to bring it up to the top somewhere. Now what you notice is once you've set one keyframe, if you adjust at another frame, it automatically sets your second keyframe for you. So what we have now is our snowflake comes down across the screen and spins, and then off the bottom. Now what I do notice is that this is quite a big snowflake, so we need to shrink it down a bit. You can either use your transform size control to shrink it, or you can use the DVE node and shrink it with the Z move, like so. What you can also do then is just tweak your final position. So if you come to frame 75 where your keyframe was, you can tweak this position so it's just off the bottom of the screen, and again come to frame 0 and you can tweak this so that it's not quite as high up, because obviously the snowflake's smaller now, so it doesn't need to be as high. If we come back and view that, you get this effect. And that is basically all there is to it. What we'll do now is we will duplicate this node tree and we will change the keyframes on these two nodes, and we'll also change the position on the transform. So if you group select all your nodes, press Command and C or Control and C, click somewhere outside your node tree and then Command and V to paste it. Now what we've got at the minute is an exact copy, so the first thing we need to do is switch out our media. So get rid of media 1/1 and bring in media in 2. Join it up. Now what we need to do is work through, and if we put media in 2 into the viewer, you can see that our mask is in the wrong position for this particular clip, so we need to change that. So select the ellipse and then you can move your ellipse to where you want it to be, and you can resize it so that you've got your new singer in there. Next, if we come to merge 2.1 or 2/1, which is here, select that and drag it up into the viewer, you can see that this one's slightly small and in the wrong place. So keeping merge 2 in the viewer, just click on transform 1 and that puts transform 1's controls into the inspector. So what we need to do is increase the size slightly, and then again using the handle in the middle we can reposition him so that he sits where we want him. So next we're going to want this second snowflake to appear 1 second after the first snowflake. So to do that we're going to adjust the keyframes, and to adjust the keyframes we're going to use the keyframe editor, which can be found at the top of your screen. On the right you've got keyframe. If you click that, it opens your keyframe editor. Now at the minute mine is showing nothing because I have it set so that it only shows the selected node's animation. So if we click on DVE you can now see the keyframes for the DVE node. To get it to only show one set of keyframes at a time, come to these three little buttons here, click them and make sure this top line is checked. If we now click on the little twirly arrow, it drops our keyframes, which are these two lines here, so that you can see them. What we're going to want to do is keep the 3-second gap, but move the whole lot a second over. So to do that, we come to 1 second, which is 25 frames. So come up to your time bar for your viewer and put your playhead at 25. If you now come back down to your keyframe editor and drag select the two keyframes, you can pull them over until that first keyframe hits frame 25. We're going to do the same for the transform node, so click the transform node and it puts the transform node in your keyframe viewer or keyframe editor. Again, select and drag over to frame 25, like that. Okay, so with the keyframes adjusted, the next adjustment we need to make is to the size and the positioning of our second snowflake. So we'll do the size first. If you bring your playhead sorry, it's not in the viewer, put that transform into the viewer. If you put your playhead in the middle so you can see your snowflake, you can see roughly what size it is. Now you can either leave it at that size, or if you want some variety, you can make it maybe a little bit smaller. Next, you're going to adjust your positioning. So come to frame 25, which is our first keyframe for this second snowflake. Click on transform, and we're going to just have it come in somewhere around there, and then go to frame 100 rather, and find an end position for it. Like so. So once you've got your keyframes and your position and your resizing sorted out, you can close your keyframe editor for a second. What you'll then do is take the output of your first transform node, drop it onto the output of your second. This will form a merge, and this will be your 2 snowflake animation. So if we drag it into the viewer, come back to frame 0 and hit play, you now get your 2 snowflakes coming down. And then from here on, it's just a matter of sort of repeating those steps. So I'll whiz the next lot a little bit quicker. So again, drag everything apart from the merge node, copy, paste. We're going to take out the media and put the next clip in, which is clip 3. Line it up, or connect it up rather. Put media in 3 into your viewer. Again, we need to adjust the mask, so select your mask and position it and size it appropriately so that you've got your singer. Kind of in frame. Then put merge 2 into viewer so you can see where he is in relation to the snowflake. Select, but don't put in the viewer, transform 1, and then you can resize and reposition to put him in the middle. And now we will put transform 3 into our other viewer, which will show us this snowflake, and we're going to do the keyframe thing again now. So open your keyframe editor, click the DVE node first. So this one's now going to be another second further on, so 25, so 50 is going to be your starting point. Little twizzly arrow, select, and just slide them over till the first frame hits, or the first keyframe hits frame 50. We're going to do the same for our transform node. And we can close the keyframe editor. We can come to the middle somewhere so that we can see it, and we can play with the size if we want to. So we can maybe make this one a little bit bigger, and then we need to come to frame 50 and decide where we want this snowflake to start from. So into your transform node, and we can start him maybe here, come to frame 100 and decide where we want him to end, maybe down here. In fact, let's bring him all the way over, and then again we're going to take the output of this merge node onto the output of the transform to create another merge node, and we now have a 3 snowflake. So now we will do number 4. So select everything apart from your merge node, copy, click away, paste. Just bring these down to make it a bit easier. So delete this media, put number 4 in. Media in 4 into our viewer to check it with the ellipse. We can come to the ellipse and just adjust that slightly. Merge 2 to see where it is on the snowflake. Just select your transform node and you can just reposition it. Size is okay on that one. And then again back to your keyframe editor. This time we are up to frame 150, no, frame 75 is our starting point for this one. So put your playhead at frame 75, open the twiddly thing, drag select your 2 keyframes and move them over to the first keyframe is at 75. Do the same for your transform. And now we can put this transform into our viewer to see it. Bring it down a bit so we see what we're looking at. Again, we can resize it a little bit if we want to. And then we need to do the start and end positions. So come to frame 75 with your transform selected. Pick a starting point. Go to frame 150 and select our ending point. Close your keyframe editor, merge onto your transform to form a new merge, and we should now have 4 snowflakes. knock the last two out quickly. I'll speed it up to save you a bit of time watching it. So that's all 6 clips in. Pipe it into your media out node and put your media out into your viewer. Come back to frame 0 and hit play. Let me just take that out of the viewer so my computer's not struggling so much. And you now have your 6 snowflakes. Got the timings on those two wrong somewhere. Or not. Depends what you want it to do really, I suppose. You get the general idea. How you time it is entirely up to you. But yeah, that's the theory behind it. The only other thing I did, and again it's an optional thing, is I put a particle snowflake, or particle random snow, into the mix. Or you could use one of the overlays that John made for you, whichever suits really. I'll just let this cage out and then we can have a look at it. And you get your choir falling through. Hope that helps. Hope it makes sense, more to the point. Feel free to message me direct if there's anything you want to sort of ask about, and I'll happily sort of help you where I can. Cheers.